Welcome back to the Our View podcast. On today's episode, I welcome my guest, Matt Curcio. Join our conversation as we discuss his life of living with muscular dystrophy and how we both see our disabilities as being part of who we are, but not all of who we are. Well, I would like to welcome everyone back to another episode of the Our View podcast, where we aim to raise awareness, educate, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. Today, I'm happy to welcome my guest, Matt Curcio, to the Our View podcast. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. It is great to have you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
I am so excited and so hyped up to be here. I've been thinking about this every day, so I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, I am so happy to have you. And Matt is another one of my new friends who I met through the Clubhouse app. And that seems to be a new theme for my recent podcast guests that I've met a lot of them through the networking social media app Clubhouse. And Matt is a fellow New Jersey person. So very excited about that. Always nice to connect with people who are in New Jersey. And so to start the episode, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are? Who is Matt?
Oh my, that's such a bold and scary question to answer. So I've always used this tagline, and when I say always, probably the last 12 years, ever since I kind of got into professional advocacy or speaking or writing, anything in the public eye. I've had this tagline of speaker, writer, advocate, just as kind of so people know the things that I'm passionate about. But I am a full rounded person, which means I have the most ridiculous range of interests. I've always I should have known that this was going to extend beyond just music interest. When you meet somebody who likes a very specific type of music, I never understood that. I love almost all music. There's really not much that I don't love. With that being said, there's very little that I don't love. So I am an out and about nerd. I am just in public eye. I love Marvel. I love Disney. I love superheroes and Pokemon. I am an avid fan. I am a foster dad. I am a husband. Um, I am disabled. I'm a Christian. And I am an all around wacky creative type. ENFP, Strengths Finder test, would be like woo, which is winning people over, communication, connectedness, strategy, and analytics. So yeah, I don't know. I'm one of those people that love to be self-aware and self-reflective. So we could talk all day about personality types or Enneagram or whatever that is. So if it has to do with personal growth or external fostering of community, anything in that realm. And then of course there's niches within that for me, but that's the broad stroke of who I am. That's my mantra is helping people recognize where their potential should be, noticing and kind of naming the roofs or the obstacles that are placed over their potential, and then creating systematic plans to dissemble those, what I call roofs, so that people can achieve what I call their God-given potential.
That is so great and so important. The work that you're doing, and we're definitely getting into that later in the conversation. But I'm really glad that you reached out to me through Clubhouse, and to see that the a lot of the work that we both do is very similar. We have very similar passions, and just to the podcast, like I said, to change the tone of conversation about disabilities and how people see those who live with disabilities is something that I felt that we were both very passionate about, very connected with. So I'm very excited to have you here. In your introduction, you mentioned that you are disabled. Can you tell us about your disability diagnosis and how it has impacted your life?
Okay, so I was born with muscular dystrophy. A lot of people hear that and they'll think of the MDA or Jerry's kids. I don't know if the younger generation thinks about that, but the older generation knows what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Older than me. And so I was undiagnosed within that spectrum for 27 years. And then very recently, a couple months before I got married, I was diagnosed with a form called like a collagen 6 muscular dystrophy or dystrophy, which is again another spectrum. So you've got muscular dystrophy, for those who don't know, is an envelope term. That's how I've always referred to it. So you have the envelope or the file folder that says MD, and then you open it up and you've got like hundreds of diseases that fall under this neuromuscular disease where proteins are not what they should be in your DNA, and it changes how you're physically manifesting in your growth. Some people don't experience effects of MD until they're in their late 20s or 30s or 50s. Some are born congenitally, which is what I was from birth. So for the longest time, it was non-specific congenital muscular myopathy, and now it's collagen 6. But I'm just a special boy living in a special world. But for me specifically, my muscular disease affects my mobility and all of my muscles. Every muscle in my body is not developed as what a person who is not affected by muscular dystrophy would be. So I try not to get into the weeds of how like I would line that up. I'll just say like if a toddler was mad enough, they could take me out. That's there's not much fight I could put up, which is another story for another time. But it affects everything in my life, the way I sleep, my energy. Hopefully, the listeners or viewers or audience has heard about like spoon theory. And people there a couple years back, there was this post kind of went viral about spoons that people with disabilities are given a limited amount of spoons. It's just, you stick with me. I took it a step further and I said they were plates. So you get plates, right? And those plates, maybe you get 10 a day. And those plates are equivalent to your energy that you have to expend for your day. And sometimes those plates drop and they get shattered before you even get to use them. But when you're done eating on those plates, they're gone for that day. And whether you drop one because maybe non-metaphorically you've tripped and fell, or you woke up with the flu, or the thing that's really important is that these plates are often equated to simple tasks like taking a shower, shaving your face, doing laundry, doing dishes. So often people with disabilities or chronic illness have to make a decision. Am I going to wash the dishes, or am I going to take a shower today? And that's not something that people without a disability often have to navigate. Some of those actions are second nature until one day that they're not second nature. So that's the best way to think about my diagnosis. I do use a scooter to get around. I probably use it a lot more than I would like to these days, but a couple years ago I had an injury that really set me back on my mobility. So, and that's a whole nother journey. That's something I love to share and talk about, because when people with disabilities go through monumental moments like injury or illness on top of what they're already dealing with, even if it's emotional trauma, the ripples, and it's like a parabola, right? Is that the exponential? Like it's exponential. So instead of just having the simple cause of, in this scenario in 2016, I tripped and fell getting off of my scooter, doing something very independent to drive my car. and I tripped and rolled my ankle and I fractured my ankle. For somebody who's able-bodied, that's a recovery, but you get your crutches, you're in and out of the hospital that day, you're good to go. For me, because of all of my other weakened aspects of my body and immune system, I ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks. I ended up in inpatient rehabilitation facility.
Right.
And it took me a very, very long time to get back to what I call quote unquote normal. And I don't normally like to use that word, but my status quo, I guess. So yeah, that's my disability affects every part of my every single waking moment.
Yeah, I am so glad you explained the spoon and your plate theory. I was unfamiliar with that until I was on Clubhouse one night, and I was actually in I in Clubhouse you're in different rooms, and a lot of times you're able to list your interests. So my interests include podcasting and disability topics and books and other things that I like to do. So those rooms with those topics show up in your hallway. Just to explain to people who are unfamiliar with the Clubhouse app. So being in rooms that are related to disabilities, you run into a lot of the same people in a lot of the rooms. So I follow a few people who they ping you, which is an invite into a certain room topic. And I was in a chronic illness room and they were explaining the spoon theory, which I had never heard of before. And it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. It's like you have a whole handful of something, of spoons that represent the amount of energy you have for the day and what you're able to do. And like you said, that one by one, they start being taken away. And then, when you're out of spoons, that just represents you being out of energy and just like, I can't, I have to go to bed now. I can't do anything else. And it's just, such a great way to explain things because at times most of the time I'm pretty good and I can last throughout the day and as I mentioned to you before we started recording, I was up until 3 a.m. Last night and just for no reason, just couldn't sleep. um and that's most of my nights. I'm up until at least midnight most of the time, but then there are times where it's just like, yeah, I have that whole load of laundry I should wash. And, but then I also just want to kind of sit on my couch and just, watch a Netflix show, watch a repeat of something of The Office or something like that and just, chill for a minute. And it's so true, the way that the spoon theory works. And I think that's a um, great visual for people to utilize when trying to explain chronic illness and people with disabilities and what they are, uh, what things give, what things that exert energy for them, and just when they're out, they're out. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciated that.
Yes, I love to talk about random metaphors. That's my favorite. And the only reason I
Yeah.
ever took it, I think it's a perfect metaphor. The only reason I switched to plates is because I think it needed to be more breakable. Because at least my experience is that
Yes.
my disability, my energy is not promised. So if I don't get the right amount of sleep, if I trip, if I fell, if I'm going through something emotional, I'm not going to have as much to offer as I would on any other day. So, and sometimes those things get taken away from me against my will.
Hmm.
So I'm fully aware of how fragile my energy is. And so, yeah, it goes into every step and everything I'm thinking, because sometimes, when I guess one thing I want to clarify is when I talk about how when they're gone, they're gone, your spoons, your plates are gone. What I mean that is when I have to walk from my scooter a couple steps at night, because I park it in the room next to my bed, to get to my bed at night, if I have not been careful that throughout that entire day, that walk is going to be the difference between me leaning on my wall or cane to walk 10 feet or me literally putting my entire weight on every surface as I go there and taking a risk of falling, and that next day having no plates to offer. So it is actually like a wall that you hit, where your muscle, at least for a physical disability, when you're tapped out, you're tapped out. But in that, I think people with disabilities have an innate superpower, which is knowing their limitations.
Yes.
And I think they are so much better and have such an amazing ability to teach society about boundaries and margin.
Yes, and being resourceful of that energy and protective of that that energy that that this would cause me, like that's going to be too much for me. Would love to, but like it's going to be too much, so I have to sit this one out, or just being ways to preserve that energy. And I'd love, again, the plate, and what you just explained of being fragile and breakable. Like I've said it before on my podcast, I'm a very visual person. So when you said like dropping a plate, I did picture it on the floor in like pieces, and not just, not just a spoon that like, just drops and it goes away. Like I pictured it, shattering, the plate shattering. So that was a very good visual. So one of the things that caught my eye on your website was a quote that I saw that says, "My faith, my thoughts, and my relationships are all drastically influenced by my disability." Can you please talk about that and how your disability influences all of these areas of your life? I just loved that quote, and would love to hear your reasoning for saying that.
Yeah, and I'm totally gonna do a little cheat sheet and actually bring up my website right now, my About
Yeah.
Me section, to in context. So the whole paragraph that I wrote in that section was, while my disability does not entirely encompass who I am, it is impossible to separate my experience as a disabled person from my worldview. My faith, my thoughts, and my relationships are all drastically influenced by my disability. I say this to explain that while not everything I post will be about disability specifically, my words will still be influenced by my experience. So, disability, so that is a journey that I have traveled and trudged through since probably my preteens age. I mean, younger, I guess. I've always been the type that can't settle for complacency. So when something's not right in my heart, when I'm not living my truest and authentic self, eventually something happens within me that basically says, whoa, 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 we need to reevaluate. And so for me, my journey with my disability was really taken kind of a roller coaster, where it went from, hey, I'm not just disabled, like I have so much to offer the world, like my disability doesn't define me, to then before that it was like, I don't have a disability, like there's nothing wrong with me. Then it was more so, it doesn't define me. Then it was embracing, I have a disability and I have needs. And now it's really come to this really meshed understanding, because I had to reevaluate and say, there are certain things in my life that I never knew growing up, whether they were me having to figure out because I was disabled, or me having to figure out because I was a 14-year-old boy, right? Because they were always just kind of like mixed up together. I'd have, rejection, right? And it was immediately my head went to, it's because I'm disabled. And sometimes it was like, no, our personalities just didn't match. And say like, if I was interested in somebody, but sometimes it was because I have a disability. So I guess the point that I was getting at is, there is a lens that I see the world through that I cannot separate, because every decision I make, kind of like what we were talking about with the plates and the spoons, is influenced by the fact that my body functions in this manner. That my job search, I guess let me frame it like this. When I have been looking for jobs in the past, I have to deal with the reality that finding a job is extremely difficult in any culture or economy. Take away the 80 some percent jobs that physically I cannot do, without, you know, with or without adaptations
Right.
that maybe I'd be interested in, right? Take those off the table. We've got maybe 20%, and these are just me making up numbers, but I think they're pretty appropriate. Within that 20%, let's call 15% probably have a bias towards disabilities, because of lack of understanding or ignorance or fear. So I can't perform, so I'm written off before I even get there. And then we have the 5% that I can actually apply for. And then I have to figure out, and they have to figure out, does my experience match what that job actually wants? So I'm constantly trudging and swimming through these, I don't know what you would call them, like rounds. Like you get through each level, you know, and like kind of like a triathlon. It's like you get through one and then you got to do the next. And even with faith, right? You know, I try and walk or I say walk, but I scoot. I try and, you know, roll very carefully when I talk about faith, because there's a lot of hurt in the disability community when it comes to faith. And I've gone to seminary. I've been a pastor, and I've done ministering and things like that. I see something as important as scripture through a lens of disability. So the things that I read about passages of healing, I see very different than somebody who doesn't have a quote unquote need for healing. And so where the rhetoric tends to go is an able-bodied person will read a scene or a section about disability, right? And they'll pull what their experience has taught them. So it might be, okay, fix the disability, save the person, right? And my reality is my disability is here, and it does not designate whether I get saved or not. And I'm saying saved in the sense of a faith way, as well as just in general, the valuing of my humanity. Right. My humanity is not dependent on my disability. Because I exist, I have value. Because I exist, I have purpose. And when I look at some of these stories, I see, I don't know, there's this one, and I you know, I'm not trying to like overstep myself in this, but there's this one story where it's about a man who can't get in to see Jesus, and it's always taken out of context, where it's saying, well, he couldn't get, and he needed Jesus to heal him, and you know, kind of goes, they had to break through the roof. That's what my whole nonprofit was founded on, this idea of breaking open a roof to reach his potential, right? Well, his healing, I guess. So many people preach and talk about this section like it's about that man's physical healing, when if you were to read it in multiple different languages and translations, you would understand that the common thread is that the only thing preventing that man from getting to Jesus, which he aligned with his greatest potential, was the onlookers. It's the same across the translations. Onlookers, a crowd, not a community, was preventing him. Not steps, not a lack of an elevator, not physical boundaries, but people were preventing him because his value was less. So then he had this small community that came around him, empowered him, crushed open his roof for him, dropped him down. And what's the first thing that happened? It wasn't him being healed. He was forgiven. His humanity was valued 1,000,000 times over. That was the miracle. It was not him walking out afterwards. That was just a cherry on top in that story. That was just like the world's going to expect this, so go ahead. So again, I'm not trying to be preachy. I also write that in my website also. I'm not here to preach on, these are things that I walk through or scoot through. I'm living it out. I have a literally disclaimer on my website that if I'm preaching, it's because I'm preaching to myself as a reminder that my worth and value is innate in the fact that I exist. So I guess all that in saying, it's kind of took a really weird road of me saying that there's nothing in my world where I can separate my disability. My marriage is different because I'm disabled. My parenting is different because I'm disabled. My work is different because I'm disabled, but it does not change my value or
Mm.
what I can bring. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. Just because things are harder doesn't mean they're worse. Typically, things are harder, they're probably more worth it.
Right. Yeah, I love everything that you just said. It was and it's so true that every part. I love your analogy of searching for a job, and how you have to, as a person with a physical disability, you have to really think about these things. And I had a conversation with my mom the other day. She was here, and I, I live in an apartment by myself. She comes here maybe once or twice a week. I'll see her, and we were having a conversation about the things that were like in my room and why I have them in certain places, and it should maybe be moved here, she was saying, and should be put there. And so I really had to explain to her. I said, okay, well, number one, I'm here by myself. I said, so I said that um that box over there that has all my hair stuff in it. So right now I have my hair in braids, but if it's out of the braids, it's curly. So I have to put gel in it and all kinds of stuff. Well, it's sitting on the floor because I have a closet door that has a sliding mirror on it. And I can't physically stand up in front of the mirror in the bathroom to do my hair. So I have to sit on the floor to do it. So therefore, my hair care products are on the floor by my mirror. And she just looks at me and goes, "Oh yeah." like what? I said, so therefore, you can move it into the bathroom if you'd like, if that makes you more comfortable right now. But as soon as you leave, it's going back on the floor in front of my mirror where I where I do my hair.
Yeah, 100%. That makes complete sense.
Yeah, so it's just like everything that that I do as a person with a physical disability, it really um I have to think about my disability beforehand. We both live in New Jersey. It's been snowing here nonstop, it seems, for the last week, and we're supposed to get more snow in the next couple of weeks or so. Um, but it's like even something with that, I have to look at the weather ahead of time to see when I can go to the store
Yes. Oh
to
my
go get
gosh.
food, or have food delivered, because it's like, okay, it's going to snow on Thursday. They might not be delivering food on Thursday, so I'll have to order it on Tuesday. And then, you're in New Jersey, so it might rain, but it might snow as well. So you never know. That thin line of where the snow and rain begin and stops is very picky here in New Jersey. But
Yeah, I
it's,
think
uh-huh.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just there's something that reminded me, like a story really quickly, because I know there's other topics you want to get to, but um I had a bunch of friends in college. I did like a semester away in Colorado Springs, and they used to be on my case so much that I needed to loosen up and I needed to not plan so much. And the funny part, this is what it still cracks me up to this day, is I am spontaneous. I love, I love to just do things by the seat of my pants, but I don't have that luxury. I don't get to do that. I don't get in this scenario, right? I was a little bit more mobile back in 2011, and so they lived upstairs. And there I had a real heart to heart, and I was like, "Hey, y'all, I'm feeling really left out from like the friendship group because you guys aren't inviting me over, and you're always getting together, and then I'm hearing about it afterwards, and then you're saying where was I?" And they like came down on me pretty hard. I'm like, "Matt, you just need to come over. You just come up. Like, we're here like any time of the day, like trying to be like loving, right?
Hmm.
We're always open. Like, we don't want to leave you out." And I looked them in the eye and I said, "You don't understand that if I walk all the way up those steps and you guys are not there, that I'm not coming back down those steps right away. And then I have
Right.
nowhere to sit to gain my energy back."
Hmm.
And I had to be pretty like stern with them. Like, my planning is not about my need for control. It's about my need to survive and thrive.
Right. Hmm.
And that is, and I do have to keep myself in check, because sometimes that planning does become about control. But at the core of what it is about my ability to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. How every part of our lives is and disability is not all that we are. We are, as you mentioned, you're a parent, you're a husband, and all these other things that we all are. But it does, it has its way. Having a disability has its way of being a part of every aspect of our life in one way or another, and in sometimes multiple ways. So I'm so glad that you read that whole paragraph and then gave such great examples, because I think for me, like the example I just gave of having my hair care products where they are, it's a bit out of place for everybody else who might, who might not be used to it, but it's like it works for me because I can't, I can't stand up and do my hair in the mirror. So, I have to do things and make it accessible for me. Another thing you mentioned in your in answering the previous question was about your Break the Roof nonprofit, and I love the concept behind this. And you told a little bit about the story in the Bible that had you come up with this name. So can you tell us a little bit more about Break the Roof and what it means?
Yeah, thanks so much for doing research. You're a good snooper. So Break the Roof, I founded in 2016 as a nonprofit. It's kind of like a subsection of one of my friends' nonprofits that's a little bit bigger. Just because I needed to get it started, I really believed that there was a need. I had done tons of advocacy projects, and a lot of them started and failed with some pretty well-known disability advocates, and they just my life just went tipsy-turvy in different ways. And I started, one of my big passions, and this is kind of what I was talking about, right? That it can't be separated, was working within churches or in faith-based organizations. Specifically, I was doing a lot of mentoring of middle school, high school, and college age guys. It's just something that just probably came out of the fact that no one really wanted to mentor me growing up for whatever reason. So it's always kind of been this deep love and desire in my heart. And the more and more that I gained, I guess, invites to leadership within the church, the more and more across the country, I recognized how deep the cavern, or the gap was for people with disabilities and inclusion. When we talk inclusion, when I talk inclusion, I talk holistic inclusion. We're not talking about the fact that people are butts in seats. We're not talking about butts in seats, right? We're talking about the fullness of people's humanity being recognized. Mm-hmm. So this Break the Roof was really founded on that whole, it's from Mark II. You can go to breaktheroof.org. And this belief that people with disabilities were not giving the shot to be who they're meant to be. And it's not okay. And it's not fair. And I'm in the bounds of the Big C Church, which is like kind of like the universal, anybody that believes in Christian faith. And they talk a big game about helping people be their truest selves. And the disparity that I was seeing was heartbreaking. And so I guess I've always, the whole "we are not a monolith" aspect really chimes well with my heart. Is just because I have Christian faith, or just because I'm a writer, it doesn't make me those specific things, right? I hate being pigeonholed. And so Break the Roof, I'm aware that the bread and butter basket was me going out and teaching churches how to be actually inclusive to the point where they could have people with disabilities in leadership. But the grander scheme is I want it to be an amplifying microphone for those with disabilities to be empowered to break through whatever roofs are put on their lives. Since then, I will say Break the Roof was doing a lot of really amazing things. Employment work for people with disabilities, conferences, a lot of me traveling, speaking, writing papers and articles, because I was living in Nashville at the time, and some life things happen, like getting 3 foster children and a lot of other crazy, wild experiences that really made me put the nonprofit on the back burner. So now I'm probably finally at a point in my life, 2021, we made it through 2020,
Yes.
to really start reevaluating. I have this deep desire. My desire to see people break through their potential is not just with the disability community. I guess it's one of those things where I'm sure you've heard maybe you haven't, but when people argue about things like Black Lives Matters, right? The thing that I always go back to is there's a fire on a street and no other houses are affected by this fire, but there is a priority. And you know what? We can say more. Like certain things take precedent and need more attention right now. And for me, the disability community is one of those comma more for me. So Break the Roof, again, was founded to empower people with disabilities. But my heart is for all people that have their potential capped. So we've done this, like I said, through speaking engagements, articles, conferences, but I've always had really big dreams and aspirations. And right now I'm trying to figure out where it's going. Whether that's like starting a fund. I've talked to you about starting a fund for people with disabilities who don't meet the qualifications of their state, that might need repairs on medical devices or accessibility into their home. So I'm looking to build connections right now and see where it goes and kind of follow the flow, I guess, of what falls on my lap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really, and like I said, we did connect, you and I would connect it through Clubhouse. And one of the things that really drew me to you to want to connect to you was this Break the Roof and the reference that you used for the story in the Bible, because my faith has been very important to me growing up, and I've always been uh, always going to church. And I always tell the story that whenever I had surgeries growing up, because I have spina bifida and I had to have all kinds of surgeries to fix things and help me walk better, and things to repair my bladder, and all kinds of wild and crazy things that I've had done and surgery wise. And my grandmother, she always told me to make sure you have a song in your heart to to help calm yourself when you go in for surgery. So and then I can remember being at her house on Sunday mornings and her watching the church programs on TV and hearing the different hymns and things like that, and just being able to I'm a very music person too, as you mentioned. You like all kinds of music, and I do as well. And so just learning those church songs, and always having a song in my heart to help calm me down, which was originally for the surgeries that I was having. But growing up and now being a somewhat a full grown adult, I don't ever claim that, but but just using those songs now, even until today, to help calm me and relieve some of that stress. So I really liked your, the way that you related it to the story in the Bible, and just helping people reach their full potential, and, breaking the roof, and just not settling for where they are, and just to know that they can, reach everything that they desire.
Yeah, it's a deep conviction that I have. It's probably the deepest conviction I have about people, is that in society, and so in Break the Roof, I constantly use the phrase in and out of the church, because my wheelhouse is working within the churches. My desire is for the communal whole.
Mm-hmm.
That if people were doing what they were meant to do and not falling into boxes that they were pushed into, this world would operate in such a different manner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes there's just as easy as switching a ramp or stairs to a ramp. Other times it's as deep doing heart work on person's insecurities and the pain that's been brought to them, whether by churches or by leadership or abusers or whatever it might be. That there's all of these circumstances that are constantly trying to push us down. And I just don't got the patience for it. I don't. I have the patience to help people through it,
Right.
but I don't have the patience for us saying this is all I'm worth or I'm not worth enough.
Right.
So if at, I guess the full scope of Break the Roof is I want to do all the things that my theological perception understands of that chapter in Mark. And that's to build a community of people that will empower people to break through roofs so that they can be full humans. Like that's the arc of the story for me. And that's desperately what I desire to create.
That's really, really great. And just even listening to you talk about it, I can definitely sense your passion and desire to make that happen. So thank you for that work that you are doing. It is, I definitely appreciate that you are doing that work. So to wrap up this episode, I always end with a form of this question, which is, what is the most common misconception about your disability diagnosis? So that can be what people misunderstand about you specifically having muscular dystrophy, or just about muscular dystrophy in general, or just people with disabilities in general. So you can approach it in any way that you'd like.
No, that's a really good question. Before I answer that, I do want to thank you, Art, for running this podcast, because one of Break the Roof's biggest desires is to amplify voices. And I think representation is the first step in doing that, and allowing people with disabilities to just be people, and to allow them to be like, I'm navigating this space. I'm disabled, and that's part of who I am, and it influences everything. But I also have an Etsy shop, like, and that's
Right.
my deep passion and desire,
Yes.
like to just be the fact that you're disabled and doing a certain thing. You don't always have to be a disability advocate. You don't always have to be the spokesperson, because I think that might be my misconception I might go with. There are so many, but it might be that everybody who has a disability has to be the spokesperson for everybody's experiences. And we are not a monolith. There are certain people in our community that are skilled, gifted, and called to be those educators, to help allies understand a little bit better, to help educate younger people, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But there are others that, we are people, and we are working through just as much trauma as you are. Some of it might not even be related to our disability. A lot of it is. And I guess that's the misconception I'm going to hone in on. For the longest time, I asked myself the question, what baffles my mind and what breaks my heart? What concept really just wrecks me? Like, why is this a thing? And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that has always been what I call the pain behind the pain. And when I see somebody with a disability, or when somebody sees somebody with a disability, because I'll even make this mistake sometimes. Okay, they have a hearing difference or a visual difference, or either using crutches. If we fix that, then their problems go away. And the fullness of humanity is saying, nah, I got this. Like, my wheelchair gets me where I need it to go, but you don't realize that I'm harboring something real deep that nobody else knows about. And that's probably the misconception that really just grinds my gears is please stop assigning people's trauma before you get to know them. Don't offer prayer of healing without knowing a person's name and story first, because what you see as their trauma might be their empowerment right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that needs to be lifted up. There are probably things, though, that are going on in their life. If you are really wanting to be prayerful or be a helpful or ally, then that means you need to start building community and giving these people a chance to talk and to share what's going on in their hearts, a safe space. And I'm not saying it's a trigger word, like we can't say safe space. No, I mean a place where somebody can be fully authentic themselves and not be terrified that they're going to be just minimized to a certain category or stereotype. Let them be full people, and you do the work. People, I'm sorry, I'm preaching to people out there as well as to myself. Do the work to do the digging, because it takes time and energy to help people out of that pain that's behind the pain.
Yes, so true. Thank you so much for everything, for this great conversation. And that's exactly what you said. So thank you for for acknowledging the work that I'm doing with this podcast. And that's exactly what I aim to do, is to show that people with disabilities we're out here, we're doing things. And there's a place, everybody has their strengths, and there's a place for those, like you said, who are doing the hard advocacy work and really doing that. And then everybody has their own style too, because through what I'm doing here, by giving people a place to share their stories, that's advocacy work too. That's raising awareness, that's educating people, and it's helping to change the tone of conversation, which are my 3 goals for Our View, for this podcast. And it's, this is my style. This is the way that I'm doing things. And so I really appreciate you saying that. So thank you so much. We all need a little bit of encouragement sometimes to know that, we're doing the right thing. So I truly appreciate that. And just before we go, can you mention your websites or any social media platforms where people can follow you and keep up to date on what you are up to?
Oh, thank you so much for that opportunity.
Yeah.
And again, thank you so much for this time. I think right now I am just 1000% invested in Clubhouse. So
Yes.
if you're on Clubhouse, or if you need an invite, because I've built up a bunch of invites that I could send out, follow me at MCurcio, MCURCIO. Also, you can find me on Facebook, my website, and Break the Roof, which if you go on right now, you'll see that they are horribly not updated because of life. But mattcurcio.org and breaktheroof.org. Just jump on, read through some of my random musings, and send me a contact request and we can chat.
Yeah. So Matt, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And, I appreciate, the friendship that we are developing, and I look forward to definitely working with you in the future and making things happen, just because we can, and just because we will. Like it's definitely necessary, and to have voices like yours who are a part of the disability community, who are for making a change, and not just within the disability community, but to the community at large, I think is so important. We do need those allies outside of our disability community to help make these things happen and to help people reach their full potential in life. So I appreciate you and appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for your time today. And I will be in touch.
Thank you so much. Everybody share, get this podcast and art's work out there, because this is the representation that the disability community desperately needs.
Yes, exactly what he said. Make sure you like and share and review and just, do all the things. So, but thank you, Matt. And I appreciate it. Our conversation today, and I will be in touch with you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Our View podcast. Leave us a review wherever you listen and let us know what you liked about this episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to follow us on all social media platforms for more disability-related content at Our View for Life. That's OURVIEW, 4 LIFE. If you listen to this episode on your phone, take a screenshot and post it to your Instagram or Facebook stories and be sure to tag us. We thank you for listening and take care.